My guest today is Gunther Verheyen. Gunther and I are both providing certified professional Scrum training. And because we both talk a lot about Scrum in this episode, I thought I would make you aware of 2 sessions Gunther and 2 sessions I provide as open enrollment in the very near future. On October the 11th to 12th in Hilversum, Gunther is providing a professional product owner certification. On the 8th to the 9th of November, he is providing a Professional Scrum Master Certification 1 level in Amsterdam. At scrum.org/Gunther-Verheyen, you can see and enroll into these courses. On November the 7th to the 8th, I'll provide a advanced Professional Scrum Master that is level 2 in New York City, and on the 14th to the 15th of November 2018, I'll provide a also advanced Professional Scrum Master 2 level in Miami for the Lauderdale area. You can enroll here at incremento.com/open-enrollment. You can also see these links at the show page. And now let's go to the show. Agile.FM, radio for the Agile community. www.agile.fm. Welcome back to another episode of Agile.FM. I'm here today with Gunther Verheyen, our author of the Scrum Pocket Guide, a smart travel companion, which was released in 2013. Gunther is out of Antwerp in Belgium. His Twitter handle is Ullize, that is ULLIZEE. GuntherVerheyen.com. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me, Joe. It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor having you on the on our conversation here. We'll talk a little bit about your book. I also learned that your book from 2013 is going to get a little bit of an update. There's a new version coming out in 2018. And we're going to talk about this. But before we get started, there's a couple of things you describe yourself, and one of them is a Scrum caretaker. What's the role of a Scrum caretaker?
Well, in 2016, after 3 years of fascinating collaboration with Ken Schwaber at Scrum.org, I decided to go out there again, be in the world, do more of consulting again, work with teams. And then you have to think about, what am I doing? What do I stand for? Do I need a title? Is this a role? What do I do? So I wanted to become independent. And I felt like Scrum caretaker, that covers what I do, what I care for things. And more, especially in this case, I care for Scrum. So Scrum caretaker. I also care about how people and organizations see Scrum, perceive Scrum, live Scrum, how Scrum is introduced for people. So that's sort of the caring element. And then later on I got more questions about it, and I felt like, oh yeah, Scrum caretaker. It's sort of like, in a way, it's almost like another word for a Scrum Master, somebody who cares for people, who cares about Scrum, who cares about the position, the role, respect for people within Scrum. So that's sort of my caretaker thing.
Right. So and obviously what you were just describing were like the outside of Scrummers, right? The teams, the Scrum Masters, people are using Scrum. But with your book, the Smart Travel Companion, you also give something back to Scrum, right? So you're influencing Scrum itself. What was the motivation for your book? I mean, this is not the first book around Scrum. But I read the book, and it's truly a pocket guide, right?
Yes.
But what was your initial motivation, I would assume, in 2011, 12, when you started thinking about writing a book? What was your motivation for doing this?
Well, the funny thing is, I didn't think about that book until like early 2013. I'll share a little history and how this came to be. Because in the revision that I'm working on, I'm also reworking the preface. And I sort of wonder about, oh my God, who could have imagined all of this would be possible 5 years after the release of this book? So it was released, like you say, 2013, rewriting it in 2018, hoping to get it even released in 2018, who knows? And I was wondering about, wow, because I get feedback from people across the world, people like it, not just because it's physically a pocket guide, like you say, you can put it in your pocket, literally. But it also seems to be condensed or focused and so on. And how it came to be was in early 2013. So in my revised preface, I'm writing about sort of how it almost accidentally happened. And one of the reviewers said, wow, it looks like there's a story behind. So I'm sort of happy, Joe, that you give me the opportunity to share that story. So in early 2013, I was still my last couple of months, looking back, I was working for a large consulting company. And via the consulting company, I got in touch with a publisher. They had a draft of a Scrum book that they wanted to publish, and they were looking for reviewers. And my consulting company, having connections with the publisher, they gave them my name. They contacted me, and I had a look at the draft or the manuscript, or whatever, and not to be arrogant, but it was, let's say, not too good. Not to say it was actually horrible.
We're not sharing any names here, so keep going.
I don't even know the name, so that's probably a good thing too.
Yeah.
And it was just, I don't know. It was just a copy paste of things, Scrum guides, and then dragged in lots of other stuff. It was certainly not based on experience and so on. So it took me a while because I don't want to blame people or judge people or assess people. I feel like that's my role in life. So I was very hesitant in, damn, what should I do with this? What should I do with this? And that took at least a month, and then decided, you know what? They asked for my review. I'm going to give feedback. It's not going to be too detailed because I would be sort of almost rewriting the thing. So I got back to the publisher saying, I'm really sorry, but I don't like it too much. Here are a number of general reasons, some detailed reasons, and so on. And I also asked them, so please, if you would go on publishing this, I would prefer my name not to be mentioned in the book. And then after a week or so, the publisher came back saying, oh, you know what? We've had sort of the same opinion from most reviewers, but in the content you have given us back, the feedback on the content, that was sort of the most impressive one. And they sort of asked me sort of a general question. Do you think, so they were not going to proceed, do you know anybody who would be able to write a book about Scrum? Because they're a publisher in the IT software world, a lot of books, and they really they wanted a book about Scrum. So that was early 2013 with a huge Scrum boom. In the Netherlands. It was a Dutch publisher too. I was working in the Netherlands full time with large companies. And I felt like, I think I can do this. Most of my people around me, my sort of close circle, said, yeah, of course you can do this. So I went back to the publisher saying, I think I can do that. So that's how it got started.
And you did it.
But that was only the start of the real work, Joe, because you know what? I felt like I've got plenty of blog notes about Scrum, all aspects of Scrum. You know what? I will just collect them, throw them together, put a sort of sequence in this, and I will have a book. That was a total mistake. No, it doesn't work like that. To have some fluency, sort of flow across the book, consistency, sort of proper reusing of words, terminology, everything. I was really very keen. But in the end, I put the most work in making it as simple as possible. And that's sort of like software and product development. That's where people spend the most time, making it simple, clear, clean. That takes the most time. But afterwards, I was really happy because that seems to be most appreciated by a lot of people.
That's true, right? So, and I want to actually go there a little bit to the format and to the size of that a little bit, because the book itself is, as we said, it's called the Pocket Guide, right? So it should fit in a pocket, and it does.
Yes.
And it's a smart travel companion. And I used to in the past use like travel guides such as like a Lonely Planet, and it really reminded me a little bit on the cover. It reminded me that you actually see hikers on your book cover. And people who are interested in the book, there's a link on the show page. But what I want to see actually and learn from you is, what was the motivation for a travel companion? So it's obviously the mobility aspect seems to be important for you, right? So that somebody has that in their pocket, walks around with it.
Yeah.
What was the driver for you around that? Because I think that's an important thing, which is really, really different to other books out there, which are heavier, bigger in size and so on. So you want people to have that in their pocket, right? Why?
Yes, I wanted it to be sort of smart in a couple of ways, because smart for me also means sort of lightweight, something that people can easily take along, like you said, like a real travel companion that you would take on a journey. And that's sort of my way of reinforcing the idea that it's not about the destination, that it's about Scrum, using Scrum, employing Scrum. It's all about having guidance on your journey. It's a journey, it's continuous, it's discovery, it's an iterative incremental process. So that helps you discover stuff. And I wanted to reinforce that idea that Scrum is all about discovery. And then discovery of products that you want to build, solutions that you want to create in complex circumstances, but also people and teams and organizations adopting Scrum. Adopting Scrum in itself is also a journey. And this is the guide, sort of travel companion, travel guide I wanted to create for people that at any point of their journey, literally meaning traveling to work, but also their journey of adopting Scrum, of using Scrum, that they can pull up my guide, look into it a little bit, read about it again, and say, oh yeah, cool, that's great. And that's also the idea of the simple language. I think it's not because it's simple language that it doesn't have multiple layers of interpretation and meaning. So I also wanted the book to be simple and concise in its language, in its format, but still serve as an invitation for people to think about, where am I on my journey? What should I do next? What might be helpful? So that was sort of the idea behind that.
Yeah. The Scrum Guide, which you mentioned earlier, is like this thing about the rules of the game. In your pocket guide, you want people, that's one of the sleeve kind of comments, or you want people to learn, see, feel the playfulness of Scrum. So there's definitely a connect between sports, your book, the playfulness. How do you see the playfulness of Scrum? So if somebody maybe possibly newer to an Agile process might say, how is this playful? This is a process framework. How could this be playful?
Yeah, well, it sort of goes back to, so I've been in this beautiful world of Scrum since 2013. So that's a long time at least.
Yeah.
And what I found also, as from those early years, with Scrum and product development, employing Scrum, software development, complexity solving, that is really, really hard work. It's tiring work. It gets you tired in the evening. But if you do it with Scrum, in collaboration with other people, working frequently with users, customers, capturing feedback, changing your mind, changing direction, changing course regularly, that's also fun. So it's very tiring. It wears you out, but not in a way that it burns you out. It's just a very satisfying way of wearing you out. So the combination of fun and hard work is actually totally possible. And that's sort of the playfulness. You can be playful and still do really satisfying hard work, helping people, providing real high quality solutions, and still in a playful way. And I would even take it a step further. It's almost the playfulness that makes it so good, that helps people build better solutions instead of having to feel like on the edge of a burnout. So that's sort of playfulness. It's like you said, at the heart of my book is sort of the Scrum game board that I call it. So simple representation of all elements of Scrum, which are not too much, and a couple of the main principles. And I do call the people doing Scrum players indeed. So fun combined with hard work. That's where Scrum brings you the most.
If you're doing it right.
Yeah, and that was sort of the goal then. Not just repeat the Scrum Guide, because there's always a Scrum Guide, but elaborate a lot on the why of the rules of Scrum. So Scrum has a number of rules and principles and also values. And instead of repeating those rules, explain those rules, hopefully in a somewhat playful way, but also in a way that people see why those rules are designed, created like that. What purpose do they serve? So that people understand, this is what we're trying to achieve. These are the problems that we try to overcome. It's also why I talk about Scrum. It's about Scrum, the framework, because it's a cohesive set of rules. And I wanted to show how leaving out even one of those couple of elements might have an impact on what you get out of it.
Right. Yeah. Do you have do you have an example of one of those rules? You feel like that was one of the insightfuls, maybe just one. I mean, obviously there's a book to be read, but maybe there is something you feel like, okay, here's a rule, something very interesting. I would have one, but I just want to hear from you, obviously out of the book writing process or by working with others, collaborating, creating the book, where you felt like that was an interesting rule I wanted to explore on.
Yeah, well, what in I know it's from my book, but at least in working with people, working with teams, and so on. Also in classes, in my coaching, at events, what seems to be the biggest eye opener for a lot of people is when I go into the idea and the concept and the purpose of the sprint review. Because everybody calls it a demo, and I will say, oh, it's not a demo. And that was sort of what I tried to achieve with the book also and in my classes. Well, why do we not just call it a demo? Why do we call it a review? So what's sort of the meaning, the idea behind that word review and not calling it a demo? And I will start talking about it, and then people get to see how the sprint review can be a so much richer event than the way it's let's say, commonly used or practiced, where it's actually just a demo, sort of boring meeting where people are invited to sit still, be silent, and listen to what other people demo. And then we talk about, Scrum only says sort of to review the time box, the people that should be present. And then Scrum defines the ins and the out of the event. And then starting from that, people get to see, oh my God, we could do so much more. So understanding the purpose of the review, where when I say, well, in a way, inspection without adaptation is pointless, that's certainly for the review, where people, if you just go there for a demo, it's just an inspection. It's all about the past, where Scrum should be forward-looking. So if I go into people saying, hey, inspection without adaptation is pointless, what is the idea of adaptation of the review, updated product backlog, insights, changing course, changing direction, strategies, and so on? And people suddenly see, wow, so they understand, in that sense, the rule, the why of the event a lot better, and then they can start thinking on how to better organize that.
Yeah, this is a perfect example, actually. This is awesome, right? And also the illustration of it. I've had folks out there saying, well, it's just the name. Who gets hung up on names? Call it a demo, whatever. If you're doing the right thing, why don't you just give it a different name? But sometimes the name does drive the behavior. Like, as you're just describing with the demo, if you're calling it a demo, there is a very different attitude towards what's happening in the meeting. Or, you know, I had this very similar thing, like we don't have to dive into this, but as another example, Scrum Master versus Agile Project Manager. And every time somebody calls it Agile Project Manager, you're just going into a very different direction. It's just by a label. It's very hard to stay in your, responsibilities if you're giving it a different name. So, wonderful example. Well, to close the topic maybe a little bit around the book, before we go maybe and explore something else, is what's new in the 2018 edition, if you can share anything already at this point?
Yeah, well, there's nothing really, really new. So there's a couple of things that I've done. Just tweaking the language a little bit. You know, the past 5 years since the book was published in 2013 and in 2018 I've rewritten it. The world has changed. Scrum has become even more important or more popular at least. So been working a little way into more like general product development instead of just software or software product development. Was tweaking the language a little bit. I did do a couple of small changes. I rewrote the scaling part a little bit, calling now how Scrum scales, to get my ideas across a little bit better. Just tweaks like that. So the overall structure is the same.
Yeah.
What is important for me is also the distinction between actually the core rules of Scrum and how then to apply the rules. And so that's still intact. I still mention user studies as a possible tactic to play the rules, but not as a mandatory way to play to apply the rules. So things like that are still intact. So tweaking language, some changes, small updates. I think it's more suitable for, let's say, for the next 5 years.
Yeah. Well, it's just like if you're really going with the analogy of a travel companion, this is really what travel companions are also about, right? So some restaurants are out of business and you want to update your guide. So there's a new language, things have changed, and this is the more accurate companion. Awesome. Well, Gunther, this is not the only thing you're working on, updating and writing the Pocket Guide. You're also in Agile transformations, you're coaching, you deal with the complexity of the modern world out there. What else do you do as a coach, and what are the things you're encountering around Scrum out there? Is there anything you can give to the listeners around some input, feedback, how a day looks like for you, or if there is even a typical day, and maybe what are the complexities you're facing out there?
Yeah, well, so we started this talk. So we're talking about what does it mean to be a Scrum caretaker. Well, it's about caring for people. It's also about caring for the value I can bring to the world, which I do sort of in a couple of ways. So one of them is training, organizing classes, facilitating classes, bringing knowledge to people, in a way allowing people to come up with things that they already knew but forgot they knew, and just using Scrum for that. So classes, I'm a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, so I do professional Scrum classes. That's one way I try to bring value. Another way is writing, like the book, but also my blog is full of stuff, which, by the way, is, if I can mention, is so amazing in a way. It fascinates me. I don't know where it comes from. So I've been doing this Scrum and Extreme program also a long time ago, as from 2003. That is an amazing long time. And you know what? I don't get bored by Scrum, thinking about Scrum, explaining Scrum. So despite the simplicity of Scrum, so let's say it's sort of the simple construction of Scrum with the elements, the artifacts and so on, it keeps amazing me how broadly we can use this, explain this, find new perspectives and so on. So it just fills my life 24/7. So that's cool. And so writing about it, that's another way. Visiting events, talking about stuff, conferences, that's another way. And then doing consulting. I try to limit my consulting because I want to balance between sort of those 4 value domains, or domains in which I try to bring value. But consulting is, in a way, very important to make sure that my feet are still on the ground, to make sure I'm really closely related, connected, and even working with people, trying to get Scrum to work in their organization. So currently working with a large insurance company in the Netherlands. So they started what they would call an agile transformation a few years ago. Contacted me because I know them from the past and they want to get more out of Scrum. Yeah. So they do things like DevOps. They want to go to CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery. They want to do Scrum. Huge organization, 1,200 people in IT, and they want to get more out of Scrum. Very traditional organization, and helping them get more out of Scrum is so satisfying. It also reminds me on how slow things go sometimes. So it's really cool. Get them to think in an agile way, and so I'm working with their coaches and so on. What struck me at some point is that one of the coaches said, "Gunther, I noticed that you're here to talk about Scrum, but you hardly ever talk about actually the rules, and certainly not the roles a lot, but you're more focused on people's behavior, how they interact, how they work, the behavior they show that helps them get more out of the events." And I think that's one of the things where the true power, the possibilities, the real future of Scrum lies. People what I would call enacting Scrum, not just understanding Scrum, blindly following the process, but
right.
understanding why they do it, and helping people to make that their sort of natural behavior. Because as you know, Joe, people have been, what I call in my book also, a lot of people have been bred and they've been raised in what we call the industrial paradigm. You have to design first, you have to do this first. All those handovers, people are sort of totally ingrained with that. It takes a while before they get over it, and they get to see, like what we said, the playfulness of Scrum, the combination of Scrum with discipline and hard work. But it also means leaving behind what they thought were certainties. And I think I explicitly say they thought it were certainties because everybody believed it were certainties. But if you would look in reality, it's not. Designs, blueprints, analysis, architectural stuff, handover, sign-off, they don't give you any additional guarantee on success or on increased delivery of value.
Yeah, none whatsoever. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then going into an organization, 1,200 people organized in silos, departments, and so on. And it's also very insightful for me on how companies actually try to adopt Scrum. Because I've been sharing this at conferences and with people across the world, certainly in Europe where I travel a lot. People see those patterns everywhere, where large organizations, they establish Scrum teams within existing silos. So you often have sort of micro isolated Scrum teams within existing departments. And that doesn't really solve the problem. The only thing they achieve is that all value, all features, all functionality is now delivered by teams and no longer by collected individuals, which is an improvement. But what is missed a lot is to use Scrum, and that's also the belief that I expressed by the end of my book, is that I believe that organizations reinvent themselves, they can re-emerge around Scrum. But it seems that a lot of organizations prefer to twist Scrum, change Scrum, so that Scrum fits their current organizational structure, rather than the other way around, because Scrum doesn't care about organizational structures. Scrum defines 3 complementary accountabilities, and where they come from, we don't care. Just look for the right people with the right talent, skills, interest, and so on. And then if you do this properly, just a product owner who would actually own the product, and then a development team with actually, or several development teams working on a product, with actually the combined set of skills and expertise and insight to bring it alive, keep it alive, evolve it, sustain it, and so on. That if you build an ecosystem around the product like that, and then with the Scrum Master sort of making sure that things work well, people understand each other, the interaction is fine, and healthy relationships and so on. If you build an ecosystem around the product like that with Scrum, difficulty for most organizations that just cuts through all departmental and silo structures that they have in place. And there's a little bit of a lack of courage to actually do that.
Right.
So you have Scrum teams working on things that they call a product backlog, where if you look at it, that's not a product backlog. It is a backlog, but it's a collection of work requirements, demands of an incredible variety of sources.
Right.
But it's not a product backlog. So trying to get them think about what is your product, who you are trying to satisfy with your product, what you are trying to deliver increments for, and then helping them think like that, and then helping them, managers, team managers, line managers, work with teams, then reform, reorganize in that direction. That's what makes me really happy.
Right.
But it's often a long and winding road, but I love this.
Right, definitely.
I love to be out with people. Yeah.
You got to do the hiking trail, right? That's not a straight line, typically, right? And you do walk the walk, as we say, on the consulting side. The writing, I just want to make sure that listeners can connect with you on the writing aspect as well. Where would people find your blog, actually? Just under GuntherVerheyen.com?
Yes. I also have ulysses.com and so, but just stick with my first name, last name.com, and they will find it. Yeah.
We're gonna link you from the events page. Now, there's a lot of good tips and things in the writing as well as here in the podcast. But before I let you go, I'm curious because not 100% sure, but you might be my first guest from Belgium on this podcast, and I just want to see and hear from you. You have traveled the world. Obviously, you've very closely worked with folks in Boston and North America, traveled to conferences. What's your assessment on Scrum or Agile in the Benelux or maybe just Belgium area? What are the differences? Is there anything that stands out in your region that is different than other parts of the world?
Well, the funny thing is, so I live in Belgium. Long time ago, started with Scrum Extreme Programming and doing projects and later on products in Belgium. But as from 2010, 2011, there was a sort of Scrum boom in the Netherlands. And since then, I've gone to work full time in the Netherlands and worked for, like you said, Scrum.org and with Ken and the beautiful people in Boston. Still working in my home office in Antwerp mainly. But when I went back to doing consulting back in 2016, I was sort of immediately attracted and asked to come work in the Netherlands again. So I have no really good idea about the market in Belgium, which is really funny. I'm not asked a lot when I talk to people, so I regularly see people. There's this thing in Belgium that we're very good at hiding how we really work. Means we have meetings and so on within organizations, and it seems that we're really good Belgians in nodding, saying yes, pretending to comply in the meetings, and then once the meetings are over, we go back to our workplaces. Then we'll go for the real solutions. So that's where we really solve the things. In the meantime, that's sort of how we work. We are sort of nobody's breathing down our neck, looking over us, so we get things fixed, and other people sort of are at rest and they are at ease and they think everything's fine. The problem with that is that maybe get things fixed, but it's not really the sort of transparency that we would hope with Scrum to be given over existing problems. So we have sort of ways to work around transparency, and I see that as a sort of a problem sometimes. And that's sort of how I see the Belgian market. I don't want to be too negative about it because there's hard people at work. There are plenty of coaches trying to achieve stuff. I've grown very comfortable, and took me a while, to be honest, with the outspoken nature of Dutch people. Just saying things how they are, how they see them, how they believe they are. And that means also towards management or hierarchically superior people. They don't care. They're sort of born pirates. And that, in a way, has helped a lot in the adoption of Scrum.
Oh, definitely. I see that as a good trait, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome, Gunther, and you are outspoken. The rest of Belgium is outspoken. We're going to hear more about your outspokenness on your blog. We're going to see more in your book coming out 2018, possibly 2019. The update to the companion. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Thank you for some background information, and all the links and things we have discussed on the show can be found on Agile.FM on the events page. And people can just directly connect with you, ask additional questions, and so forth. I want to thank you for your time.
I want to thank you, Joe, and most of all, I want to thank your listeners for listening to this.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for listening to Agile.FM, the radio for the Agile community. I'm your host, Joe Krebs. If you're interested in more programming and additional podcasts, please go to www.agile.fm. Talk to you soon.